more exclusive Naruto Lemon videos coming out on my Boosty. You can support me by subscribing. Link in description. Description: to avoid unnecessary parental moralizing, Sasuke always hired a significant other for the traditional family week. However, his deception was constantly exposed. Will he be able to outwit his family this time, or will he still have to submit to the will of his parents? Chapters 8 to 10. Enjoy watching. Part 8. Itachi lazily opened his eyes. Through the loosely drawn curtains, bright playful rays of the autumn sun slipped into his and Deidara's bedroom. Blinking a couple of times, the Uchiha habitually reached for the phone lying on the bedside table. Over the past 2 days, this simple action has become a habit. In the morning, Itachi usually called the hotel and insistently asked that his requirements be repeated, or that they answer whether this or that hotel could meet his tastes and wishes. 2 whole days were spent searching, preparing and filling out documents, and finally, when the Uchiha achieved what he wanted, he still managed to sleep normally and even get enough sleep. Deidara grumbled something displeased and tried to hide from the curious rays of the sun on Itachi's shoulder. The brunette grinned, stroked the blonde's head and turned on the phone. What? The Uchiha did not believe what he saw. Is it already 9? The morning of the 9th day of October, although it was sunny, started out very lousy. It started with Itachi oversleeping. Okay, it's not that bad. The Uchiha reassured himself. I agreed with my father that we will fly out today at 11. This means that now I urgently need to convince Sasuke of the need to fly somewhere. But first, coffee. Having decided on a plan of action, Itachi carefully moved Deidara onto the bed and sat down. After thinking for a moment, he gently shook the blonde's shoulder. Sukuri responded reluctantly, without opening his eyes. Our plane is in 2 hours, the Uchiha said quietly. Deidara buried his nose in the pillow, but after a minute he jumped up sharply. What? Itachi smiled, pecked the blonde's lips and climbed off the bed. If you want, you can sleep for another hour. No. Sukuri yawned infectiously. I need to get ready. He absent-mindedly scratched the back of his head, trying to figure out what exactly he needed. Yawning once again, Deidara finally realized that Itachi still hadn't told him where they were going. Having collected his thoughts, the blonde was about to ask a question, but noticed in time that he was left alone in the bedroom. Somehow, lately I like surprises less and less. Deidara pulled the blanket towards him, and wrapping himself in it, went back to sleep. Sometimes it seems surprising how simple, ordinary morning procedures can invigorate and lift your spirits. Having finished his coffee, Itachi smiled contentedly and stretched. Now that he felt human again, he could safely ruin the life of his beloved little brother. Or maybe not to spoil it, just talking wouldn't hurt either. They haven't had a heart-to-heart talk for a long time. Deciding that he knew his brother well enough, Itachi confidently climbed to the 2nd floor and headed towards Sasuke's office. He wouldn't be so sure that his brother decided to work early in the morning if he knew that he was spending time with Naruto. But since the newly minted couple lived chastely in neighboring rooms, Itachi was more than sure that he would find his brother in his office. And so it happened. Hello? Itachi wanted to add. Workaholic. But not noticing a single document around, he changed his mind. Sasuke sat at the table, habitually placing his elbows on the table, clasping his fingers and resting his head on them. He looked blankly at the door, and seemed to be thinking intently about something. Without waiting for an answer, Itachi closed the door tightly behind him and, without making unnecessary noise, walked up to the table, taking an empty chair. It seems to me, or are you not getting enough sleep? He asked a little louder than usual. Tapping his fingers on the polished table, he continued. What time did you arrive yesterday? Sasuke said thoughtfully. At 11:30. He still didn't even look at his interlocutor. And what did you do? We were walking. Eh? They left around 7, Itachi recalled. Did you go to the cinema? No, we were walking. Sasuke deigned to look at his brother. We were just walking, what's not clear? That is, you walked along the crowded streets, Watch the lights turn on in the city, the stars appear in the sky. Tell me, brother, when did you become a romantic? Sasuke barely shrugged his shoulders and stared at the door again. No matter what his brother said, he was very pleased with how he and Naruto spent their time. Perhaps, before, the thought of wandering aimlessly through the streets of the city would have caused him disgust and irritation, but not now. Now he treasured every second spent with Uzumaki. It was easy and calm with Naruto. Next to him, the most ordinary, seemingly insignificant things acquired their own unique bright shade. Sasuke has already fallen in love with the rather shallow river, which conventionally divides the city into two unequal parts. Funny ducks, plowing importantly through the dirty green water, and firmly believing that winter is warm and not scary, that there is absolutely no need to fly away. For some reason, it became important to notice the first star in the matte black sky, and be sure to report this discovery to the Uzumaki. With a smile, listen to his slight indignation about the fact that he does not see anything, squeeze his hand tighter, take him to the middle of the fiery bridge, and with him enjoy the beauty of the view of the city drowning in the bright lights. Holding hands became a habit, and became something normal and completely natural. Still, I don't understand you. Noticing that Sasuke was thinking about something, Itachi spoke again. I don't understand how you can live like this? Sasuke frowned and looked questioningly at his brother. How can you live with Naruto in different rooms? Don't you really want to hold him close to you, feel his warmth, breathe in his unique smell? I'm not even talking about doing anything more than just lying in a hug. I want to, of course. I really want to, but I can't. I am limited by the contract, and not only that. Now something else is more important to me, okay? Itachi shook his head. It's up to you how to live. I wanted to talk to you a little about something else. Sasuke slowly turned his thoughtful gaze to his brother and grinned. He had no doubt that Itachi was up to something, otherwise he wouldn't have come just to talk to him. To be honest, heart-to-heart conversations never worked out for them and most often ended in a scandal and the fact that the brothers did not talk for at least a week. We are flying to Konoha today. I would like you and Naruto to join us. Sasuke became serious. He looked at Itachi with a cold, appraising gaze, trying to decipher his plans. Another check. Maybe we should give up. But Konoha. I doubt Naruto was there. He will definitely like this town. Such a trip could be a great birthday present. Don't even think about refusing. Itachi warned him. Mom will be very upset about this. Besides, I have long wanted you to go somewhere on vacation. Yeah? Sasuke arched his left eyebrow skeptically. Certainly. Itachi responded sincerely. You have taken on a lot of unnecessary work. Nothing like this. I'm having so much fun. Maybe we should think about changing the entertainment a little? Itachi smiled slyly. Why not try a change of scenery, say for a week? It sounded, as always, indifferent and uninterested. Will you come with us? Sasuke leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Itachi was definitely up to something, but what exactly? Why would he organize such a troublesome trip to a place where they have no connections? The fingers of two hands are not enough to count the number of hotels they own in various cities around the world. Why Konoha? Yes, of course, it's good there. Naruto is definitely worth a visit. But why did Itachi start all this? Sasuke chuckled at his guess. It looks like his father shared some interesting news with him. Just think, they want to apologize like that. When are you flying out? At 11. Sasuke looked at his watch and grimaced. There was just over an hour left before departure. You could have told about your plans earlier. I know, it's my fault. I wanted to share my plans with you a couple of hours earlier, but unfortunately I overslept. You could have said this yesterday. So are you flying with us? Risky. Sasuke stood up, slowly walked around the table and walked to the door. However, this is a good chance to give Naruto an unusual gift that he will not refuse. The Uchiha had no doubt that the Uzumaki would reject any trinket, not to mention something more valuable. Besides, it's not like I can refuse. Do we have a choice? Sasuke clarified after all. Of course not. Itachi responded with an angelic smile on his lips. I'll go get ready. He pretended not to notice his brother's dissatisfied look. Don't forget, we leave at 11. You know, father doesn't like it when people are late. He doesn't like it. Sasuke slammed the door dully. Wait. He shook his head and went out to the stairs. Okay, now I need to tell Naruto that we are leaving soon. Thinking about what he would say to Uzumaki, and whether it was worth knocking on his room, Sasuke did not notice how he approached the right door. He stopped and listened. It was quiet outside the door. Perhaps Naruto was still sleeping. The Uchiha wanted to open the door, but at the last moment he changed his mind and knocked. Came the muffled answer from the room. Either this meant that it was possible to enter, or that its occupant was aware that someone wanted to see him. Sasuke hesitated. On the one hand, he wanted to come in, on the other hand, he wasn't sure that he should do it. The problem resolved itself when one of the servants opened the door. The Uchiha arched his eyebrow in surprise and looked at the boy with an icy gaze. The young man drawled, not knowing what to do now. This was the first time he had encountered a problem like this. Having fulfilled the wishes of one master, he encountered the wrath of another. The guy didn't know what to do now. Are you going to come in? Something clicked, and Naruto snorted in displeasure. Sasuke, ignoring the servant, entered the room and stared at the Uzumaki with curiosity. The blonde was sitting on a neatly made bed, and with the help of some instruments, he made something like a battery beep. Here, on the bed, colored wires, metal wire, and the body of some old model of telephone were carelessly scattered. What are you doing? I'm calling my contacts, Uzumaki responded without looking up from his work. Suddenly he froze, apparently realizing that someone had entered the room after all, put down the instrument, and, ruffling his already disheveled hair, somehow looked guiltily at Sasuke. What? The Uchiha came closer, suppressed the desire to touch the blonde, who now seemed so confused and sweet. Blinking a couple of times, Naruto forced himself to take his eyes off the brunette and look at the bed again. The battery is working. He returned to the interrupted work. The case is also fine. He carefully took the case with a deep crack in the middle with 2 fingers. Almost okay. He quickly collected the phone. Have you tried turning it on? The blonde looked with curiosity at the servant who was pressed against the wall and wanted to merge with it. And no. The guy shook his head to be sure. Turn it on, it definitely won't get any worse. Without waiting for permission, Naruto himself pressed the right button, and the phone lit up blue. Cool. The blonde was amazed, handing the phone to its owner. It still works. Still, you should change your case, and maybe your phone too. It will last another week, but no more. Too old and too active. Thank you. The servant grabbed the phone from Uzumaki's hands, deftly took the tools from the bed, and disappeared from the room with lightning speed. You're welcome. The blonde chuckled, following the guy with a puzzled look. Why is he? Naruto looked at Sasuke puzzled. The Uchiha sat down on the bed next to Uzumaki, mentally continuing to convince himself that now he should not touch this so desirable guy. Now Itachi's idea of going to the resort didn't seem so bad to Sasuke. He mimicked Uchiha Naruto. What? Nothing. The blonde shrugged. I'm trying to say that I don't understand you at all. Sasuke smiled. We're leaving. What? The Uchiha checked his watch just in case. We're leaving in 40 minutes. You le time? Naruto asked syllable by syllable, and deftly jumped off the bed. Yes, Sasuke carefully watched Uzumaki, involuntarily noting to himself that in this loose white cotton t-shirt the blonde seemed a little skinny and so handsome. There was no longer talk of any flights. The Uchiha mentally undressed the blonde, kissed his indignantly parted lips, left bright possessive marks on his slender neck, caressed his slender body, trying to evoke the first groan of pleasure. Where are we flying? It seemed to Naruto that it would be less evil to fly somewhere. to fly with the Uchiha than to stay here alone with him. Sasuke found it difficult to tear himself away from his thoughts. Remembering the question, he smiled slyly. I will not say. Naruto opened his mouth indignantly, but without saying anything, he closed it, exhaled and asked angrily, For how long? For a week. So, if you want, pack your things. At exactly 11 o'clock, all the employees of the Uchiha mansion breathed a sigh of relief. All the owners unexpectedly expressed a desire to leave. Now the gentlemen and their guests, with bags on their shoulders and a small suitcase in their hands, were boarding the plane. How long will it take us to fly? Uzumaki asked doomedly, looking at the soft seats of the plane. 1 hour 15. The technician immediately answered, deciding that the question was addressed to him. Wonderful, Naruto muttered. Simply wonderful. Is there something wrong? Deidara, without looking, chose a pair of seats, climbed to the window and immediately attached his seat belt. No, Uzumaki muttered. Do you want me to sit near the window? Sasuke suggested, only now remembering the blonde's fear. Naruto shook his head negatively, gave the technician his bag, took the first available seat, immediately looked out the window and mentally prepared for torture. He had flown before, and just the memory of it made him shiver. You can't, Uzumaki mentally reproached himself. You can't be so afraid of heights. This is a stupid, unfounded fear. And yet I'm so afraid. He tensely clenched his hands into fists. Lord, how can I survive this hour? Sasuke looked attentively at the blonde for a minute, trying to give himself the most serene look and hide his tension behind an indifferently detached gaze. The attempt was worthy of praise, but nothing more. The Uchiha sighed, shook his head and buckled the guy who decided to completely ignore the seatbelts. Naruto didn't seem to notice, only tensed even more when the pilot announced he was ready in a minute. Sasuke gently and unobtrusively touched the blonde's tightly compressed lips, smiled when he was honored with an intensely attentive and at the same time trusting look, sat down next to him and covered the Uzumaki's cool, still tightly clenched fist with his hand. Naruto watched with poorly concealed horror, as every second they became further and further from reliable, solid ground. He was not at all impressed by the fact that it seemed that the sky could be reached with your hand, that the city was becoming smaller and smaller every second. He was left indifferent by the fact that the intricately woven streets of the city resemble a skillfully woven web, that the shallow, heavily polluted river seems clean and full-flowing. We have become even taller, the blonde noted to himself in horror. Why did I sit near the window? Just to stop being afraid. Stopped? The Uzumaki began to tremble slightly. He didn't even notice that the plane had already gained altitude and, like a bird, was soaring in the sky. Naruto, Sasuke called quietly, hugging the blonde's shoulders and lightly pressing on them, forcing the guy to look at himself. Meeting his gaze with sky-blue eyes, in which horror and despair splashed in half, the Uchiha shuddered internally. Pulling the guy as close as the chair would allow, he kissed him carefully, trying to calm him down and distract him a little. Imagine that you are driving in a car, Sasuke said softly but demandingly as Uzumaki's gaze became a little more meaningful. Try to get some sleep. Naruto nodded uncertainly, carefully laid his head on the Uchiha's shoulder, which pleasantly surprised the brunette, and closed his eyes. He didn't even think he would be able to fall asleep. Mikoto watched her youngest son with a slight half-smile. She really liked what she saw. The woman generally liked everything from the moment she arrived. She never condemned her son's choice, although sometimes his new passion was, to put it mildly, astonishing, and Mikoto even sighed with relief when the deception was revealed. She found it hard to believe that her son could make such a strange choice. But all this happened before, but now Sasuke's choice was incredible. Uzumaki, despite all his spiritual simplicity, which very often irritated the Uchiha, was able, without knowing it, to win over a woman. How I want to believe that everything is serious with them. Mikoto cast a short glance at her husband, who was enthusiastically reading the latest newspaper, looked out the window and seriously wondered where they were flying. She already regretted asking Itachi and Fugaku not to tell her about this. Sasuke looked thoughtfully at the blonde dozing off on his shoulder and smiled. Naruto seemed so peaceful that he didn't want to wake him up at all. But still, he gently shook the guy by the shoulder. The answer was a dissatisfied snort. Then the Uchiha tried to act differently, although he very much doubted that it would help him. Sasuke just wanted to do this for a long time, and he was not going to miss such a great opportunity. Running his hand through his thick golden hair and enjoying its unearthly softness, he tried to wake up his neighbor, fingering it and tangling it even more. The answer to him was something similar to a contented rumbling. "Wake up, your handsome man." Itachi winked at his brother and, letting Deidara go ahead, followed him out. "Easily say. Even a tank won't wake you up." Sasuke grumbled. "We haven't tried." Uzumaki muttered and tried to make himself more comfortable on the makeshift pillow, but nothing came of it. Getting up, the Uchiha quickly got his bearings. "Or do you want to fly back?" "Fly?" The blonde sat down and stretched his stiff neck. "I don't want to." He rubbed his right eye with his hand. "Have we already arrived?" He just realized. Sasuke smiled. The puzzled, sleepy expression on Uzumaki's face was funny. Obeying an inner desire, the Uchiha affectionately greeted the blonde and stood up. "Why?" Noticing that there was no one in the salon, and there was no need for such a bright game, Naruto asked, blushing slightly. "Because you're my boyfriend." Sasuke shrugged and smiled again. "And there's nothing to object to." Uzumaki scratched the back of his head and nodded, accepting the explanation. "Let's go, they're waiting for us." The Uchiha headed towards the exit. The airport didn't stand out in anything special, and Naruto couldn't understand why Mikoto was so jubilant and why Deidara was so happy. Just think, a tall building with mirrored columns. Where are they not? Yes, there are some bright posters here that are so annoying to the eye that reading what is written on them seems like a feat. Moreover, Uzumaki still could not understand where they had arrived. "Where are we?" he finally asked. In Konoha, Mikoto, perhaps, did not dance with happiness. "Ah," Naruto said. Apparently, the name of this place should have told him something. Judging by the woman's happy face, this is a very good, or bad place. Konoha is, so to speak, a small cultural island. Itachi readily explained. It was formed relatively recently, about half a century ago, within the framework of a supposedly ecotourism company. I won't bore you with details. The Uchiha smiled, noticing the puzzled face of the Uzumaki. The point is that several countries participating in this company, let's say, allocated part of their territory in the end and such an island was formed. This is a kind of guarantee of peace. Itachi shook his head. That's it, I'm telling you, no details. In a word, this is a very beautiful small town, which contains the cultures of many nations. There is almost everything here, with the exception of the sea and the mountains we are used to. But words are words. It's better for you to see it all for yourself. Naruto said thoughtfully, and confidently walked towards the high glass door, wanting to see this miracle island with his own eyes. The doors opened automatically. Uzumaki decisively stepped over the threshold and froze. He found himself on a wide street, lined with multicolored tiles and lined with a variety of trees. The view that opened up resembled a picture from some old movie. No, there were no old dilapidated buildings here, no vintage cars passing by, and no horse-drawn carts. No. Konoha was a modern city, this was immediately evident, the same airport was proof of this, but what an atmosphere there was. Warm and peaceful, making you involuntarily smile, just like that, for no reason, to smile at what is here now. The gigantic airport building somewhat resembles a rock, hiding the pointed roofs of 5-story buildings from prying eyes. For some reason, tower roofs predominate here. Perhaps they also want to hide something. Low pillars posters stand proudly between the trees, on which a map of the city flickers faintly. The Uzumaki immediately approached one of these pillars and ran his finger along one of the schematic paths with interest. The touch screen immediately responded to the command and brought the image of the selected street closer. In a split second, Schematic images of houses, shops, cafes, bars, and restaurants began to appear on it. Each square was overgrown with an inscription in a language unknown to the blonde. Taking a closer look, he noticed that you can choose any language, almost any. From the impressive list given, he had to be content with English, with which he was practically not friendly. After a minute of studying the slightly changed screen, Naruto's attention was drawn to a photo album. It contained photographs of various places in Konoha. A huge fountain with very interesting architecture, several suspension bridges illuminated by numerous lanterns, endless alleys of the summer park, several photographs of lakes and low plateaus, hot springs, corn plantations, equestrian clubs, and much more, but Uzumaki stopped scrolling through the photographs. And all this is here? He didn't believe it. Oh yes, Mikoto nodded. When I first came here, I was just as surprised. Sasuke, why don't you and Naruto take a walk? Deidara suddenly suggested. Great idea. Fugaku nodded, and for the first time in all the time that Naruto had known him, he smiled welcomingly. Give us your things, we will take them. And you have fun. Exactly. Mikoto nodded. There's no need to spend half a day on accommodation. We'll take care of these little things. Don't waste your time. Sasuke opened his mouth to protest, but Uzumaki interrupted him. Thanks a lot. We agree. He took the bag from his shoulder and solemnly handed it to Itachi. Don't lose it, he playfully threatened. Is there anything valuable there? Deidara became interested. No, Naruto smiled. It's just Sasuke's favorite bag. And at the Uchiha's perplexed look, he was surprised. Is not it so? Sasuke didn't care about the bag at all. He was more worried about the choice of hotel, in which he was not offered to participate. He didn't really trust his brother. Sasuke would rather spend a few hours checking into a hotel than leave Itachi free to act. Under no circumstances would he give his brother the bag. But a walk with Naruto was too tempting to refuse because of some not very well-founded suspicions and fears. He gave his bag to his father, glanced sideways at the approaching taxi, and looked expectantly at the Uzumaki. Hooray! Naruto happily hung on the brunette's neck. Have fun, Itachi ordered instructively, handing the bags to the driver. Don't worry about anything. I'm talking about everyone. I'll take care. This is what scares me. Sasuke chuckled to himself, holding Uzumaki next to him, who had decided to pull away. And I'll tell you where we are located, so don't worry about anything. I'm already worried. Sasuke frowned. Great. Naruto smiled happily. We're counting on you. He deftly escaped from the Uchiha's embrace, grabbed him by the hand and resolutely dragged him somewhere forward. Sasuke chuckled, mentally enjoying the stunning effect his blonde smile had on everyone, and the guy himself didn't seem to notice it. He probably didn't even notice how his smile affected people. After all, if I knew, I would probably use it and smile much more often. The Uchiha caught up with Naruto and squeezed his hand tighter, drawing his attention to him. Where are we going? Don't know. I'm here for the first time. If we continue to walk straight like this, we will run into a dead end. Uzumaki scratched the back of his head, puzzled. Where do you want to go? To the fountain, and I also want to see the bridges and ride horses, and you can also. Seeing the brunette's smile, Naruto became embarrassed and fell silent, feeling that he had said too much. Let's start with the fountain, Sasuke suggested, and led Uzumaki to one of the maps of the city. Which one? The Uchiha displayed a list of fountains with a miniature image opposite each one. That's it, Naruto blurted out. Confused, the guy took a closer look and, finding the fountain he had seen earlier, pointed his finger at it. The image immediately enlarged. Next to the picture there was a brief history of the fountain. Under the photo there was a city plan and several recommendations. What is written here? Uzumaki gave up, realizing that he was unable to read even half of the text. You do not understand? Sasuke was surprised. No. Naruto shook his head and sighed. I only understand technical English, and not always. He shrugged guiltily. So, The blonde frowned and looked hopefully at the Uchiha. You know English, right? I know. Sasuke grinned. It tells a beautiful legend about two lovers who… Stop. Uzumaki immediately interrupted. Let's skip the details. For some reason he couldn't stand the word lovers lately. Let's just go and have a look. The Uchiha shrugged and looked closer at the map. We should go by bus, he said thoughtfully. No! Naruto immediately protested. You need to walk around this city. No transport. As you say. Sasuke agreed easily, looked at the plan again and nodded to his thoughts. Let's go too. The walk imperceptibly extended throughout the day. Naruto had no idea that the landmark he had chosen was located in another part of the city. Moreover, he almost immediately forgot about her, admiring the wide alleys covered with carpets of red and yellow leaves. The architecture of this city was also impressive. It seemed that each street belonged to its own era. The guys walked through the era of the samurai, looking with curiosity at tourists and local residents dressed in accordance with the fashion of that time. They themselves refused to completely immerse themselves in this atmosphere, and did not change clothes, just as they did not linger on a randomly chosen street. Turning at the next bend, they suddenly plunged into the times of medieval Europe, and in the same way refused to change their usual attire to a gilded camisole. However, they liked the idea of riding in a carriage. Through a small window divided into 4 parts one could observe preparations for some grandiose event. As the coachman explained, once a week, from 10 to 12, a real ball was held here, and now those who want to participate in the upcoming fun are actively preparing for it, in much the same way as preparations for such a grandiose event took place in those distant times. Having left the carriage, the guys turned again and found themselves in a small, apparently modern area. Taking advantage of this luck, they decided to have a snack. Having rested a little from the vivid impressions, they again went to explore the surroundings, and under the unobtrusive guidance of Sasuke they gradually moved towards their hotel, the address of which Itachi had sent several hours ago. Lord, how beautiful it is here! Naruto stopped, noticing that the Uchiha had fallen behind. The 2 young men who stopped Sasuke did not like the Uzumaki. What he didn't like even more was that they were speaking in some unknown language. The Uchiha, meanwhile, said something coldly, grinned wickedly, walked around the clearly dumbfounded guys, caught up with Uzumaki and hugged him around the waist. Are you tired? Tired, Naruto admitted honestly. Let's go back to the hotel. We will still have plenty of time to explore everything. Where is she? The Uchiha, sensing the blonde's desire to break free, reluctantly let him go. Somewhere in this area. Let's ask over there. He pointed to a newspaper stand on the corner of the road. The Uzumaki nodded, took Sasuke by the hand, not noticing the slight smile that touched the brunette's lips, and led him to the kiosk. The hotel Itachi chose was a little further than the Uchiha had expected. Although the seller strongly recommended that the guys take the bus, Naruto categorically refused, still preferring walking to public transport. But we were most likely placed in the same room, Sasuke noted when, an hour later, they approached a 5-story building decorated with various bas-reliefs. Uzumaki said thoughtfully. It's logical. He followed the Uchiha. After listening to the brunette's conversation with the manager, Naruto realized that they lived on the 3rd floor in the 14th room. You said that you don't understand English, Sasuke reproachfully remarked, catching up with the blonde on the stairs. Numbers, Uzumaki noted philosophically, are the basis of the foundations. Why was that woman looking at us so suspiciously? I have no idea. The Uchiha opened the door, let the blonde forward, followed him in, and understood the reason for the manager's bewilderment. In the spacious bedroom room, made in pastel colors, there were a couple of armchairs, a table, several chairs, a bedside table, a wardrobe and, of course, a bed. In fact, that was precisely the biggest problem. Firstly, it was alone, and far from being a double, it couldn't even be called a semi-size. To fit 2 people in here, you'll have to sleep in an embrace. Sasuke was not delighted with the discovery he made. He had no idea how Uzumaki would react to this news, who, without paying attention to the bed, immediately rushed to look into the closed doors. Of course, closed doors are secrets covered in darkness. This is much more interesting than non-standard beds displayed in plain sight. Sasuke was not at all surprised to learn that one of the doors belonged to the bathroom, the second was the back door. There is also a balcony hidden behind massive curtains. Overall, the room was very okay, if not for this misunderstanding with the bed. The Uchiha chuckled, took his bag, kindly delivered by his brother, carefully examined the locks, and easily discovered that someone was too lazy to close the pocket. And that someone was clearly not him. Itachi. Sasuke looked at a pack of medicine and a tube of some kind of cream, carelessly thrown into a small compartment. Why are you interfering in my life? Part 9. Contrary to all Sasuke's fears, Naruto, upon discovering that the two of them would have to huddle together on the bed offered by the hotel, did not become indignant. Perhaps he decided that some kind of mistake had occurred, and the Uchiha would now quickly deal with such a trivial problem. The Uzumaki enjoyed the view of the garden from the balcony, while Sasuke tried to correct the misunderstanding created by his brother. He spent a lot of time and mental strength in order to change at least something. All attempts to find another room, another bed or futon were in vain. Moreover, the desire to change the hotel turned out to be impossible. It's just a bed. Naruto interrupted Sasuke's mental flow of abuse. The Uchiha didn't even notice when the blonde entered the room. Why kill yourself so much over this? Just think. Uzumaki yawned sweetly. Let's sleep together. Sasuke sat down on the edge of the bed. I think that's the whole problem. Although I don't mind sleeping with you at all. But I'm afraid that sooner or later I simply won't hold back. We'll have to spend 6 nights like this. It's hard to believe that you are so calm about this situation. Naruto fell onto the free part of the bed, closed his eyes and smiled contentedly. Without trying to decipher the grunt Uchiha, he continued to reason out loud. It's not so bad here yet. Do you think so? Certainly. It's great here. And the bed is actually quite big. I learned what a small bed is in my second year, when we started a major renovation and had to share a bed with a neighbor. That old lady creaked and wobbled so much that we were afraid that she was about to collapse under us. Although, of course, it's stupid to compare a 5-star hotel and a student dorm. Did you live in a dorm? This fact itself struck the Uchiha much more than the news that Uzumaki shared a bed with someone. Yeah. I came to Kawasaki to study. Naruto turned on his side so that he could see Sasuke. Actually, I wanted to enter Todai, but at the last moment I changed my mind. Still, Tokyo is much further than Kawasaki. The Uchiha wanted to know where the blonde came from, but instead, he asked a question that was much more interesting to him. How long did you sleep with your neighbor? Eh? Uzumaki seemed surprised. No. He laughed. A couple of times, but believe me, that was enough for us. We were afraid to even breathe in that wreck. In general, we worked part-time at night and worked on different days, so usually the bed belonged to one person. Sasuke seemed pleased with the answer. Have you had many, halves? I think it's 10. Uzumaki whistled. And you? The Uchiha asked a counter-question. I have no idea. Catching a surprised and slightly mocking look, Naruto became a little embarrassed and tried to explain. You see, I'm not into games like you. If you're asking about relationships. The blonde fell silent thoughtfully. In fact, I had absolutely no time for dates and any kind of romance. All my relationships, perhaps, did not last more than a week. It would probably be more correct to call them one-night stands. However, I pretty quickly stopped playing such games, devoting all my time to work and study. How long was the shortest? Family week. 1 day. Mom always feels when she is being deceived. Sometimes it's easy for her to bring us, to clean water, sometimes not. Uzumaki grinned, yawned and rubbed his eyes with his hand. You do as you wish, and I'll go to sleep. It was strange to just share a bed with someone. Sasuke couldn't remember the last time he slept chastely next to someone. Trying to get comfortable, he turned on his side and felt a burning need to put his hands somewhere. After thinking a little, the Uchiha found a good use for them, in his opinion. Carefully, trying not to wake the sleeping Uzumaki, Sasuke wrapped his arms around his waist and slightly pulled him towards him. Burying his nose in the soft hair of his neighbor, he inhaled the drink, the unique smell of summer emanating from him, smiled and did not notice how he dozed off. Even though Naruto really wanted to sleep, he couldn't fall asleep for a long time. Although the hotel bed was many times larger than the one offered in the dorm, there was hardly enough space on it for two guys. There was no saving wall here that would prevent him from falling out of bed, and there was no opportunity to push away his loving neighbor. However, there was no desire to push Sasuke away either. The Uzumaki relaxed and soon fell asleep. The sun slowly appeared from behind the horizon, painting the clear sky pinkish golden. The first birds woke up and habitually greeted the daylight with a friendly trill. The flowers slowly rose and opened their lush buds again, dew glistened on the lush grass. Itachi frowned and opened his eyes. Blinking a couple of times, he looked in bewilderment, first out the window, then at the clock. The Uchiha was amazed by the fact that he woke up so early. Itachi tried to get up, but Deidara's displeased grumbling stopped him. The Uchiha lay down again and Tsukuri, as if wanting to make sure that his boyfriend wouldn't go anywhere, immediately settled comfortably on Itachi's chest. The Uchiha smiled and stroked the blonde's head. Itachi closed his eyes and sighed. A strange premonition did not leave him. Having still not determined what could ruin their short vacation, the Uchiha dozed off again. When Sasuke woke up, it was already quite light. Curious rays of the sun wandered chaotically around the room, reflecting from the glass chandelier, dissolving in the depths of the black bag, merging with the golden hair of the Uzumaki. The Uchiha glanced sideways at the sleeping blonde and smiled. Naruto put his hand on his chest, his head on his shoulder, and slept peacefully. Sometimes, when some particularly annoying ray of light tried to play with him, Uzumaki wrinkled his nose funny and quietly snorted. "What should we do today?" Sasuke covered the blonde's hand with his own. "We could lock ourselves here and use Itachi's gifts for their intended purpose." The neighbor's hot breath tickling his neck prevented him from thinking normally. "No. That's not it. After all, he plays his role, he plays it very well and believably. I don't even know how he feels about me. But this, perhaps, can be found out." The Uchiha carefully shifted the Uzumaki onto the bed and, accompanied by a displeased snort, headed into the shower, having previously taken the phone with him. Naruto lazily opened his eyes. He was having a good dream and didn't want to wake up at all. But at some point, the blonde felt that something was missing. This thought haunted him, and he woke up. Blinking a couple of times, Uzumaki yawned lazily. The room in which he woke up seemed vaguely familiar to him. "That's right, I went to the resort with the Uchiha," the guy recalled. "By the way, where is he?" As if in response to his question, one of the light doors opened and Sasuke entered the room. He was wearing light trousers that resembled bloomers and rubber slippers. In his hands he held a towel, which he had used to dry his hair just a minute ago. Naruto swallowed, trying to look away from the Uchiha's slender, pumped-up body. The first time he saw Sasuke shirtless, it was much easier to tear himself away from the contemplation of his torso. Perhaps this is because they were busy with business, or maybe because at that time Uzumaki practically did not know the brunette. With an incredible effort of will, Naruto forced himself to stop looking at the Uchiha and switch his attention to something else, for example, to such interesting and unusual pants. The choice was not made very well. The wide belt holding the trousers on the brunette was tied purely symbolically, and evoked only one desire in Uzumaki to untie it. Naruto licked his lips involuntarily. "Good morning." Sasuke smiled, pretending that he did not notice the blonde's devouring gaze. Uzumaki barely suppressed a yawn, mentally convincing himself not to look at the Uchiha. It turned out badly. The blonde watched his neighbor's every move. So he threw the towel on the back of the chair, slowly walked up to the bed, sat down on its free half, took out his phone from his pocket, put it on the bedside table, and looked thoughtfully at his bag. Shower. That's right, I need a contrast shower. Naruto climbed out of bed, stretched, and lazily looked around the room in search of a towel. Then I'll definitely wake up and… I'll still find the Uchiha damn attractive. Having still not found a towel, Uzumaki decided that this kind of thing should be in the appropriate room. The assumption, of course, is not the most reasonable. After all, he was still in the hotel. On the other hand, it was not any kind of hotel. When the blonde disappeared into the bathroom, Sasuke fell onto the bed and closed his eyes. He desperately wanted to touch Uzumaki, and the Uchiha promised not to deny himself such pleasure at the first convenient opportunity. And no, the convenient possibility is not that the blonde didn't lock the door. Or maybe it's closed. Sasuke mentally hoped. Maybe I was just lost in thought and didn't hear this rather quiet click? However, the Uchiha still did not check this. The contrast shower finally woke Naruto up. Having cheered up, the guy took the towel off the hook, turned a small piece of fabric in his hands, and chuckled. The problem that arose with him made the blonde forget about the Uchiha remaining in the room. The fact is that while running to the shower, Uzumaki didn't even think about the fact that it wouldn't hurt to take a robe or a change of clothes with him. He didn't want to put on what he had taken off a few minutes ago, if only because he would have to change anyway. Shrugging and nodding to his own reflection, Naruto tied a towel around his hips and returned to the room. Sasuke lazily opened his eyes and coughed. He never expected Uzumaki to come out looking so appetizing. Are you okay? The blonde became worried. Are you sick? What else could he think of when he saw the Uchiha lying there and coughing? It didn't even occur to Naruto that it was all his fault. That the drops of water shining on his neck, which the guy was tired of wiping, evoked certain desires in Sasuke, which become stronger and stronger when he looks at the too short towel, ready to fall to the floor at any moment. No. The Uchiha tried to pull himself together. I choked. The blonde chuckled incredulously, walked up to the bed and, sitting on its edge, put one hand on his forehead, the other on the brunette's forehead. You're colder than me. He finally gave his verdict, and removing his hands, looked puzzled at the brunette. What would that mean? Sasuke sat up, put his hand on Uzumaki's neck, thereby wiping away the seductively shiny drops, and looked carefully at the blonde. Naruto flinched briefly, but made no attempt to remove the other person's hand. He looked at the brunette a little expectantly, waiting for him to answer his question. The Uchiha interpreted this look in his own way. Moving a little closer to the blonde, he kissed him demandingly. Uzumaki was a little surprised, but responded to the kiss. Obeying his desires, he wrapped his arms around the brunette's neck and pulled him closer to him. Sasuke was slightly surprised by this behavior, and very pleased. He threw Naruto onto his back and only pulled away from his lips when there was a catastrophic lack of air. It's impossible. The Uchiha convinced himself, admiring the guy lying under him. We made an agreement, and I cannot break it. All of Sasuke's thoughts disappeared at once when the Uzumaki, pulling him towards him, pressed himself to his lips, demanding continuation. And yet the Uchiha found the strength to temporarily stop. Reluctantly breaking the hot kiss, he, as if apologizing, touched the blonde's neck and pulled away slightly. Naruto. The Uchiha called in response to a quiet, dissatisfied snort. The blonde opened his eyes and slid his hand over Sasuke's chest, releasing him. Are you provoking me? A little. Uzumaki admitted honestly. And what will you do if I succumb to your provocation? Have fun. Perhaps Naruto wanted to say something else, but the Uchiha prevented him from doing so, once again sealing his lips in a demanding PS. However, the thoughts haunting Sasuke did not allow him to completely surrender to his desires. He was used to believing that an agreement was more valuable than money and the Uchiha would not risk violating it, even with the consent of the Uzumaki. At least until he found out what it could mean for him. Sasuke pulled away from the desired lips, gently stroked the blonde's cheek and asked, as if by chance, what would you want if I broke our agreement? Naruto smiled blissfully. I'll tell you about it when you break it. Quite a logical answer. So what should I do? The Uchiha moved slightly away from the blonde. Wait for now, he decided with great difficulty. Has stopped? Naruto thought a little disappointed. Although, it's not so bad. I wouldn't mind continuing, but then our agreement would fall apart. It would be terrible. It's doubly terrible because I don't know what to ask him. If before I could still come up with something, but now I can't. I wish this wasn't all a game, but I can't demand that from him. Speaking of the agreement, Naruto rose slightly on his elbows and turned to the brunette. Do I have to be next to you all month? Of course. The Uchiha was slightly surprised at such an obvious question. What? He smiled slyly. Do you want to run away already? No. Uzumaki shook his head. I feel good with you. He was slightly embarrassed, realizing that he had said the last phrase out loud. Sasuke smiled and was about to say something, but the phone interrupted him. The Uchiha never doubted that an expensive tariff could not become an obstacle and prevent Itachi from calling his precious little brother. However, for Sasuke, the expensive tariff was also not an obstacle and he, sparing no expense, made the calls he needed. And yet calling your own brother, with whom you live in the same hotel, is stupid, to say the least. You can just come and say whatever you want. Although no. The Uchiha decided, accepting the challenge. It's good that he didn't come. I wouldn't let him in anyway. Itachi says, he said, putting the phone aside, that if we don't come to the cafe right away, then we'll die of hunger. Is it true? Uzumaki was sincerely surprised. It sounds scary. Let's not take any risks. The guys gathered quickly, army style. The choice of clothing was made at random. Naruto fished out of his bag classic black jeans and a loose, non-poisonous bright orange t-shirt with a black manufacturer's logo on the chest. Deciding that it was far from summer outside, Uzumaki, rummaging in his bag, pulled out a white trowel. Sasuke was also lucky enough to pull out black classic jeans, and with them he brought out the same jacket. Reaching into his bag again, he pulled out a starchy white t-shirt. Having carefully examined each other before leaving, the guys chuckled at the same time, apparently saying that they were satisfied with each other's appearance. Before the guys had time to walk halfway through the corridor, they were stopped by a guy of about 20. He was dressed rather strangely. One got the impression that the young man had put on almost all the clothes he had. Over a modern tracksuit, from under which a medieval doublet peeked out, was thrown a scarlet-red cloak with a pretty braid around the edges. In broken Japanese, the guy explained that he was the director of an amateur theater, that in a few days they were staging Romeo and Juliet, and that he needed just 2 people to play the main roles. Having listened to the guy with cold contempt, the Uchiha reluctantly deciphered to Naruto the essence of the director's wishes, which for the blonde, in its original version, remained a mystery. Uzumaki liked the idea of the performance, but the thought that he would have to change clothes made his eye twitch nervously. Naruto would not mind looking at this entertaining show, but he had no desire to participate in such events. Sasuke politely refused, calmly watching the director's face sadden. The guy looked like he had just been deprived of his last hope. He muttered something about how they really needed a brunette and a blonde, and added barely audible that there were very few wigs in the improv theater. Naruto looked at the director in alarm. He was sincerely sorry for the guy, but he was not going to change his decision because of pity. Brunette and blonde, thought the Uchiha. He chuckled. Don't worry. Sasuke whispered in the blonde's ear and, smiling affectionately, slightly pushed him forward. Looking indifferently at the hapless director, he invited him to follow them. The guy, still in his nondescript thoughts, nodded and followed the couple. The cafe was located on the first floor. The entrance to it was an arch with a decorative metal gate decorated with artificial red flowers and hospitably open. The tiled floor was skillfully painted so that it seemed as if you were walking along an alley in a garden or park, rather than being indoors. Lianas crawled along the walls, however. It was difficult to say whether it really was like that, or whether it was the work of a talented artist. The tables were very different. Small, solitary tables for four. Large festive tables, and small separate offices for couples. Mikoto, who kept glancing at the entrance, was the first to notice her son and waved to him. Sasuke nodded affably and, just in case, grabbed Uzumaki by the hand and dragged him to the far, celebratory table. "Good morning, boys," she joyfully greeted the approaching guys. "Good morning." Naruto smiled, addressing his greeting to everyone gathered at the table. "Hello." Deidara gave Uzumaki a return smile. "Have a seat." Fugaku showed hospitality. Now the man looked somewhat relaxed and seemed somehow suspiciously friendly to Naruto. It was unusual to see the formidable head of the Uchiha family so domestic. "And who is this?" Itachi was the first to notice the director shifting from foot to foot. "Oh," Sasuke drawled and with difficulty kept a mask of impenetrability and calm on his face. "This is the key to making your long-time dream come true." Itachi looked at his younger brother suspiciously and arched a skeptical eyebrow. He, not noticing anything around, continued. "You always wanted to try yourself in acting. Besides, weren't you the one who wanted to do something with Deidara?" "Here." Sasuke pointed to the director, who was clearly trying to understand what the brunette was talking about. Judging by his concentrated and slightly puzzled face, the guy was at least coping with the task. "He will help you achieve your dreams." They agree. The last phrase was addressed to the director. Her boyfriend quickly understood and beamed. "What do you agree to?" Deidara was alarmed. The director started babbling again. Introducing himself as Erasure, the guy told his actors about the upcoming performance, fished out the rehearsal schedule from one of his pockets and handed them to Itachi. Mikoto looked at the newly minted Erasure with open interest. Fugaku listened to the guy with half an ear and nodded favorably, expressing approval of the director's words. Stop! Itachi interrupted the conversational guy and turned to Sasuke. "What makes you think that cool?" Naruto interrupted him. He, remembering how he had once trudged off from a luxurious drinking bout early in the morning to take another exam, made an incredible effort on himself and, with half-hearted grief, was still able to make out everything that Erasure had just said. "I will be happy to watch your performance. Sasuke, we simply have to support him." "Of course." Uchiha Jr. nodded completely seriously. "When do you say staging?" "In 5 days." The director even lost his accent in this phrase. "Why would I be scared to participate in this?" Deidara was indignant, seeing that Itachi had stopped objecting. Of course, the Uchiha still felt guilty before the Uzumaki and was ready to make such a sacrifice to atone for his guilt. "Because," Sasuke smiled kindly at Tsukuri, "your boyfriend is involved in this. You won't leave him alone, will you?" "Okay." Deidara snorted angrily, realizing that now he was kind of being tested. "Can we at least eat?" Erasure understood the hint. Having reminded the place and time of the first rehearsal, he took his leave, after wishing everyone a bon appetit. Naruto, flipping through the menu, to his indescribable delight, found ramen on page 20 and immediately ordered several servings for himself. Seeing that Sasuke was discussing something with Itachi, he took it upon himself to order his boyfriend's strong black coffee and curry. "How do we understand this, brother?" Itachi literally hissed, looking intently into Sasuke's eyes, trying to see at least a drop of remorse there. "Why on earth do you decide for me what I should do? Why on earth did you decide that you could interfere in my personal life?" Mikoto reached for a napkin. "They care so much about each other. They care about each other so sincerely. Trying to make each other's dreams come true. It's all education," Deidara muttered. Fugaku nodded in agreement. "Here it is, sincerity," Mikoto continued, furtively wiping away an uninvited tear with a napkin. "Even a good actor can't play like that." "Really, Naruto?" She looked at the guy completely seriously and slightly moved her eyebrows to the bridge of her nose, as if demanding an answer. The Uzumaki sighed and shrugged. Judging by the fact that neither Sasuke nor Itachi paid attention to their mother's heartfelt speech, they were very busy with their brotherly conversation. I don't know, he admitted honestly. I haven't met any good actors. Is it true? Fugaku was slightly surprised. But we recently met one. And who? Naruto was sincerely interested. You. Mikoto simply answered, carefully watching how Uzumaki's face slowly changed. He turned slightly pale and more serious, but no further changes occurred. The blonde looked calmly at the woman and shook his head negatively, as if saying that he would not fall for provocation. Am I a good actor? He thought at that moment. Not funny, Mrs. Mikoto, not funny. A good actor will enter the role, play it from beginning to end, and come out of it with ease. If he plays a lover, he will portray unearthly love, but will not fall in love with his partner. Unlike me. A good actor can separate acting and real life. I can't. Your order. The arrival of the waiter put an end to all conversations. Breakfast passed in tense silence. The brothers glared at each other and smiled wryly at each other from time to time. Deidara ate the ordered soup without much pleasure and, frowning, mentally pitied his unfortunate fate. Sukuri hated the theater. His father contributed a lot to the development of this completely unfounded hostility. Naruto devoured his favorite ramen not without pleasure. However, the mood did not even think of lifting. And it was some kind of mechanical pleasure. Uzumaki knew that ramen was delicious, that there simply was no and could not be bad ramen. No matter how tasty the food is, in unpleasant company it loses almost all its taste. Mikoto looked anxiously, first at her husband, then at Uzumaki. What bothered her was not even the fact that the blonde did not respond to the obvious provocation, but the fact that he noticeably became sad. This, on the one hand, gave reason to think that his and Fugaku's assumption turned out to be true. On the other hand, the likelihood that they were wrong was very high. The most offensive thing was that it was now impossible to verify this assumption for sure. If this is Sasuke's next prank, then after a few minutes he will already know that he is at gunpoint, and will probably do something. If not, then it would be a very uncomfortable situation. Uzumaki, it's hard not to respect Naruto, Fugaku thought as he bit into a croissant. He knows when to remain silent. I couldn't even imagine that this guy might not respond to another provocation. What will you do now? Mikoto decided to take advantage of the fact that her sons did not pay attention to her not entirely successful conversation with Naruto, and, as if nothing had happened, started small talk. Let's go, Itachi muttered, but remembering in time that he was talking to his mother, he softened his tone. To the rehearsal. She's just in an hour. He even found the strength to smile. Oh, the Uchiha smiled. Try there. We will definitely come to your premiere. Deidara miraculously swallowed the soup and only then coughed. His idea of the premiere was radically different from the Uchiha's. Mikoto. And you? The woman meanwhile switched to her youngest son. Have you already decided what you will do? Come ride horses with us, let's plunge, so to speak, into the Middle Ages. They say that a French corner has recently opened here. We simply must visit it. Naruto sighed heavily. He absolutely did not want to go somewhere with these rather nice, but too poisonous people. However, he didn't make a sound, leaving the decision to Sasuke. No, Uchiha Jr. responded calmly. He was worried about the Uzumaki's noticeably lowered mood. Naruto and I have other plans. Is it true? Mikoto became interested. Which ones? Unfortunately, I can't tell you about this. The Uzumaki looked up from contemplating his empty plate and looked warily at the Uchiha. Naruto didn't like plans he wasn't privy to. It seems Naruto doesn't know anything about your plans. Itachi noticed the blonde's wariness. Of course. Sasuke was not at all embarrassed. This is a surprise. He looked at his watch. We have to go. He got up from the table. Look. He grinned at Itachi and Deidara. Don't fail the production. Naruto hesitated for a minute, but finally stood up too. It's better to spend the whole day with the Uchiha and his unexpected surprises than with Mikoto, who planned every minute of her vacation, and her stern husband. At least in Sasuke's company you don't have to worry about unpleasant conversations, or you can nip them in the bud. And the fact that he risked completely losing his head next to this guy doesn't bother anyone, and, in principle, doesn't matter at all. Part 10. Why do we need to run somewhere? A clear, fairly warm autumn day was quite conducive to a morning run, but the recent breakfast spoiled the whole impression. Besides, Naruto saw no point in rushing anywhere at the resort. And they started their race at the exit from the hotel and continued to run at a fairly fast pace for about 5 minutes. We're not late for anything. No, Sasuke breathed. We're late. They ran along one of the many pedestrian alleys, along which some shaggy bushes were planted in a dense row. If, we don't reach the newsstand in 3 minutes, we'll have to keep Mom company. So why are we running so slowly? Better tell me why this kiosk is so far away. The Uchiha mentally groaned and hurried to catch up with the blonde who had rushed forward. The desired pavilion was discovered 2 turns later. He hid in the shade of 2 tall trees growing behind him. Next to the stall there were 2 benches, on which several people were sitting, reading completely identical newspapers. Naruto stopped and took a breath, looking around. The alley along which they ran abutted and dissolved into a small perfectly round square, adjoined by 2 more similar alleys. Near the newsstand stood a carriage drawn by 1 black horse, which, judging by the way it angrily shook its luxurious black mane, did not at all like standing here like this, in the middle of a stone square, where there was neither lush grass nor cool water nearby. We made it, Sasuke noted, catching his breath. Taking Uzumaki by the hand, he confidently pulled him towards the cart. What about walking? Naruto tried to object. Everything will be, the Uchiha promised. First we'll just take a ride around the city. Believe me, it's not as big as it seems. The blonde wanted to say something, but they just approached the cart and the coachman, smiling good-naturedly, said something to them. This is definitely not English, Uzumaki consoled himself, watching how Sasuke barely smiled, answering the man, opening the cart door and inviting him to climb in first. What did he say? Naruto leaned back in the soft chair and slightly tilted his head to the side to see the Uchiha. That we're practically late. Sasuke closed the door with a light slam and sat down next to Uzumaki. The door opened again. Smiling white-toothed, the coachman happily muttered something and slammed the door. And now he said, the Uchiha translated, so that we hold on tighter. The driver shouted something resembling a victory cry, and the cart abruptly took off, tilting slightly to the left side. Naruto flew back to the window and reflexively put his hand in front of him and grabbed onto something metallic and seemingly durable. Sasuke grabbed the tightly closed door in time. Now I understand why seat belts are needed, Naruto muttered as the cart leveled out again. Exhaling carefully, he nevertheless risked letting go of the life-saving handle and sitting down more comfortably. The coachman shouted something cheerfully, clapped his hands and began humming some cheerful song. What language is this? Desperate to answer this question on his own, Uzumaki asked. Spanish. The cart tilted sharply to the right. Even if Sasuke wanted to say something else, he didn't have time. The guys, not expecting such a quick trick, flew towards each other. Hitting their foreheads, they simultaneously said several unprintable words, simultaneously rubbed the bruised area and laughed. The carriage stopped, and the driver looked anxiously into a small window hidden behind him. The driver is a dark man of 30 with jet black hair, curly curls peeking out from under his cap, with the brilliant, lively eyes of a man open to learning something new and yet unknown in this world. He warily watched the fun of the passengers. The young people were talking about something in a language he didn't understand, but judging by their intonation and laughter, they clearly weren't swearing or complaining about life. The coachman chuckled in bewilderment. Usually he had to listen to complaints in broken Spanish and only understand by the angry gleam in the passenger's eyes what exactly the dissatisfied client wanted to say. However, the guys weren't complaining, and the brunette seemed to be fluent in Spanish, as if it were his native language. The black horse neighed displeasedly, reared up and, angry at the sudden stop, abruptly took off. It is not known what the proud animal was trying to achieve, but the passengers in the carriage still slid from their seats to the floor. The coachman, making sure that he would not fall at the next turn, sharply pulled on the reins and angrily shouted something to the obstinate horse. The horse, as if answering its owner, neighed and reluctantly stopped. The driver looked anxiously out the window again, watching the passengers get up and thinking that if he received a reprimand from them today, it would be quite fair. Something about his crow went berserk today. He can't stand still, he rushes around the city like crazy, and doesn't slow down when turning. In fact, the driver liked this pace, but today it was too fast even by his standards. You know, Naruto stood up, leaning his elbows on the leather-upholstered sofa. This is too extreme a trip. The Uchiha responded thoughtfully, getting up. It looks like that. He exchanged a few words with the coachman and sat down by the window. Won't you translate? Uzumaki looked thoughtfully at the brunette and wanted to sit opposite him, but Sasuke, grabbing his wrist, prevented him from doing so. Sit down next to me, he demanded in a tone that brooked no objections. Naruto shrugged, sighed, and complied. The driver shouted something again and, having received a short answer, took the reins in his hands. Voronoi shook his mane and rushed away. This time the passengers did not fall and even practically did not move. It was not for nothing that Sasuke sat near the window. Realizing that this trip would not be slow and smooth, the Uchiha quickly figured out how to protect himself. With his left hand he grabbed the handle that had saved Naruto not so long ago. With his right hand he hugged and pulled the blonde to him. The Uzumaki expressed his displeasure with a quiet snort and an unsuccessful attempt to free himself. The blonde believed that he should sit opposite him and, just like the Uchiha, hold on to the saving hand. Fortunately there were two of them here. He asked. Sasuke remembered that he never answered the question. If we were going to continue the journey. And you told him. The cart tilted sideways again, trying to navigate the turn. Sasuke gripped the surprisingly strong hand tightly. Naruto was pressed against the brunette. Yeah. Uzumaki breathed when the cart again assumed a horizontal position. And why did you agree? We have to look around the city. The Uchiha shrugged. At this speed? Naruto was sincerely surprised. The cart tilted in the other direction. Let me change my seat after all. No, I won't let you go. What if PC? Naruto took this as agreement, and closing the already tiny distance between them, smacked the brunette on the lips. The cart tilted to one side again. Sasuke pressed the Uzumaki closer to him, not allowing him to pull away, and pressed himself to his lips, drawing the blonde into a hot, hot kiss. The sudden stop forced the guys to reluctantly tear themselves away from each other. The Uchiha, in no hurry to let Naruto go, looked out the window. It's just a traffic light. He chuckled. What a decent horse we have, however, Uzumaki remarked sarcastically. Sasuke grinned and again greedily patted the guy, who had completely forgotten that he wanted to sit down against. Naruto spent a long time trying to figure out where they were going. He didn't remember Sasuke telling the coachman his final destination. Surely he will definitely understand the name of some place. Uzumaki had no doubt about this. However, remembering Sasuke's first conversation with the driver, the blonde realized that he had never heard anything similar to the name. And the coachman didn't even ask where to go. Or did the Uchiha not translate everything to him after all? Or maybe this is just an extreme attempt to explore the entire city in half a day? An unsuccessful attempt, it must be said, if only because from the small window only the sidewalk and bushes of this glorious town were visible. Oh yes, even the smooth, massive trunks of trees stretching into the sky. Besides, Naruto hardly looked out the window. There were two reasons for this. First, it was not very convenient to watch. Second, he had a much more interesting thing to do than look boredly at the virtually unchanged landscape outside the window. The blonde never moved to a safer place. Instead, he settled down on the Uchiha's lap and ran his hands through his thick hair. Sasuke hugged Uzumaki by the waist and, pressing him tightly to himself, did not miss any opportunity to touch the blonde. And such opportunities were a dime a dozen. Although Naruto stopped thinking about where and why they were going, the guys still had a final destination. Even in the morning, while basking under the warm streams of a refreshing shower, Sasuke decided what they would do. At first, the Uchiha was a little sorry that he got involved with such a crazy driver. But, as they say, everything that is not done is all for the better, and Sasuke was once again convinced of this. While the coachman was thinking about what kind of fly had bitten his black horse today, and was trying not to fall off the box, and his surprisingly silent passengers were having fun in the cart, the obstinate horse still followed the given route. Moreover, it seemed that he himself wanted to go where that young man, who spoke very well in Spanish, ordered. Naruto missed the moment when the usual urban asphalt alley ended and the typical forest path began. Voronoi, feeling something familiar, calmed down, slowed down sharply and stopped trying to get rid of the burden at the nearest turn. "Where are we?" Uzumaki looked out the window. There was still nothing particularly visible there, but it was clear that the city seemed to be left behind. In the forest," Sasuke concluded, looking out the window. The carriage stopped, and the driver shouted something cheerfully. "We've arrived," stated the Uchiha, reluctantly releasing Uzumaki. Naruto thought about something for a few seconds, then came to his senses, got off the brunette, got out of the carriage and looked around. They arrived at a fairly spacious clearing with short green-yellow grass flattened to the ground. Tall trees grew around, forming a strange geometric figure. Some of them swapped their usual green outfits for bright red and sunny yellow. Some were still rustling green leaves quietly. Several paths led to the clearing where they stopped. One of them was the one they arrived on. The other three were lost between trees and several granite stones on which flags of various countries were painted. Somewhere in the distance the sound of engines starting was heard. "What's there?" Naruto looked around suspiciously, trying to determine the source of the sound by ear. The Uchiha exchanged a few words with the coachman, and, when he drove off a couple of meters, answered. "Airplane rental." We're not going there, are we?" "No. We won't go up." Uzumaki sighed with relief. Sasuke continued calmly. "We'll go downstairs." "It's not much of a difference." Naruto muttered a little disappointed. However, going down was much better than going up somewhere. And the fact that there will be a layer of earth above you, through which in some places you can see the distant sky, you can try not to notice. "My imagination is too wild," Uzumaki marveled at himself. "But the question concerns heights." No, it's impossible to even mentally prepare for this. You just have to come to terms with not having heard the last phrase said by the blonde, or perhaps pretending that he had not heard it. Sasuke took Naruto by the hand and confidently led him along the path, on the sides of which were painted stones. The guys walked in silence, thinking about something of their own and simultaneously listening to the noise of the forest. At times the relative silence was broken by the melodic trills of birds occasionally peeking out from behind the lush foliage. The guys, without saying a word, simultaneously turned their heads towards the new sound, trying to look at the next bird, reminding them that they were still in the forest. Breaking away from their thoughts and returning to reality, the guys enjoyed the warm autumn day, rejoiced at the light but noticeable gusts of wind, listened to the crackling of dry branches that every now and then fell under their feet. The path quickly led them to a still green clearing, with moss-covered hills on both corners. Sasuke confidently walked towards one of them. Upon closer inspection, the hill turned out to look like tall, massive arches. Having looked at it for the first time, Naruto decided that it was most likely the mouth of a lazily yawning predator. Looking closely, he saw steps leading down to the ground. Trying to determine what kind of miracle of nature this was, Uzumaki missed the moment when a third person appeared in the clearing. He was wearing a gray tracksuit, and in his hands he was holding a stack of some colored pieces of paper. Advertising? Naruto was mentally surprised. Here? This is so unprofitable. Do you buy advertising? He raised his eyebrow in bewilderment, watching as the Uchiha took the change in two colored prospectuses. No. Sasuke smiled. Let's go. The Uzumaki shrugged. He vaguely realized that these were some kind of tickets. Although the guy didn't see the need to get a ticket just to walk through the forest. If this was some kind of nature reserve, it would be logical to charge them before they got into the forest. They went down the steps and, after several flights, found themselves in a spacious cave underground. Attached to what served as the ceiling of the cave was a huge chandelier candlestick, in which thousands of candles were burning. In their light, one could see the ancient drawings with which the smooth walls of the cave were covered. On both sides of the entrance there were several counters, behind which the sellers were bored. They sell something here too. Uzumaki chuckled to himself, let go of the Uchiha's hand and approached, as far as possible, to one of the walls, trying to look at the drawings depicted on it. This was a whole life story. Naruto came to this conclusion after a few minutes of viewing the images. He did not know where the life path of the hero about whom the story was told began. That fragment of the story that the blonde began to examine told him that a certain young man was going to go in search of something very valuable, perhaps provisions, perhaps not. How he said goodbye to his girlfriend, or maybe his wife, how, throwing on a warm bearskin, he leaves the hut and sets off on his long-term journey. Uzumaki took a break from reading the pictures. His attention was drawn to the dim green color that beckoned one of the previously unnoticed tunnels. Naruto wanted to come in for a sneak peek, but remembered in time that he didn't come here alone. Turning around and not finding the Uchiha next to him, the blonde went in search of him. Fortunately, there were practically no people in the cave. Returning to the stairs leading up, near which, as Naruto remembered, they parted, the guy was prevented by more and more tunnels, beckoning with their blue, purple, silver-white lights. Sasuke didn't let the blonde out of his sight for a minute. He paused at the entrance, handing over tickets, and looked at the goods on offer out of the corner of his eye. Noticing that Uzumaki stopped and looked around, clearly looking for someone, the Uchiha smiled. He wanted to approach the blonde, but was distracted by the salesman. Sasuke had already forgotten that he had asked him anything. Looking at the goods on offer, the Uchiha chuckled approvingly and nodded. When Sasuke turned around again, Naruto was already much closer to him. He stopped again and thoughtfully looked at the tunnels flickering in the candlelight, as if wondering whether he should go somewhere. "Where shall we go?" The Uchiha silently approached the blonde, hugged him around the waist, and whispered his question in his ear. The Uzumaki flinched in surprise and slowly turned around. Seeing Sasuke behind him, he noticeably relaxed, but still muttered with displeasure. "Don't scare me like that. Do not leave me alone." Naruto winced again. This time because of the words spoken by the Uchiha. He easily escaped from the brunette's embrace and, not allowing him to notice the slight blush and satisfied smile, grabbed his hand and confidently pulled him forward. They had almost entered the tunnel, which shimmered silver-white, but Sasuke at the last moment pulled the Uzumaki towards him. Naruto turned around to tell the Uchiha what he thought of him. He ignored the cheerful lights playing at the bottom of his anthracite eyes, took in more air into his lungs, but fortunately, did not have time to say anything. Sasuke expected something like this reaction. He deliberately pulled the blonde towards him too much, and when he turned around indignantly, the Uchiha covered his lips with his own, not allowing him to say a word. Not expecting anything like this, Uzumaki did the first thing that came to his mind, answered the PTS. "If you continue to not stop me, I will break our agreement." Sasuke slid his hand under the blonde's loose t-shirt, and lifting it slightly, ran his hand up the guy's relaxed back. "You can't be like that, not here." Naruto seemed to read the brunette's thoughts and pushed him away from him. "So maybe we should go to a more secluded place?" The Uchiha almost asked this question, but stopped himself in time. "By the way," he noted to himself, "we'll definitely be alone there. But that doesn't mean—" "No, it doesn't mean. Let's go." Sasuke calmly took Naruto's hand and confidently led him towards the tunnel, glowing purple. The Uzumaki sighed and obeyed. The tunnel turned out to be small and quite wide. Naruto didn't even notice how it ended and how they exited into the next cave. It was several times smaller and much brighter than the previous one. Everything around sparkled in different shades of purple. Taking a closer look at the ceiling and walls, Uzumaki noticed the edges of various geometric shapes. What is this? Naruto looked at the cave slightly wary and at the same time fascinated. Amethyst, Sasuke answered slowly, also admiring the sparkling walls. What? Uzumaki didn't believe it. Are you saying that everything here is lined with precious stones? The Uchiha thought honestly. I doubt. Let's check. Naruto rushed towards the wall, but the Uchiha stopped him. I don't think we'll be allowed to touch anything here. The blonde, purely out of idle curiosity, tried to find the video cameras, but, having found nothing, he gave up on this useless task. Let's go, Sasuke demanded to pull Uzumaki's hand. They passed through the amethyst cave and emerged into the next, equally small connecting tunnel. It looks like each stone here has its own cave, Naruto said thoughtfully, examining the intricate play of multicolored sapphires. This time he noticed a small sign above the entrance to the cave. Where do they get them from? The blonde walked out into the middle of the cave. Beautiful, he drawled, peering into the yellow-blue-green reflections playing on the ceiling. They again emerged into the tunnel, which turned out to be somewhat narrower and longer than the previous two. He wriggled like a snake and soon led curious travelers to the stairs. Having passed the first flight, the guys found themselves on a flat surface. The ceiling sloped upward. On the smooth, dark granite, some silvery white pebbles sparkled like stars, the cave with which the guys accidentally passed. Close and at the same time unattainably far away, as if there was a light in the sky, shimmering and forming an intricate figure, the northern lights. Naruto was ready to swear that this was exactly what it was, although he understood the impossibility of this phenomenon here, underground. And yet it was great. Amazing, Uzumaki whispered. I've never seen anything like it. I would never have believed that such a thing existed, if I hadn't seen it myself. Did we come here for this? He guessed. Now they were in no hurry to leave this area, unlike the caves in which the Uchiha was not eager to linger. Sasuke pulled the blonde to him and made him almost weightless. Happy birthday, he whispered. I didn't think you remembered. Naruto smiled and looked again at the iridescent ceiling. Thank you. An inappropriately sad note slipped into his voice. You didn't have time for birthdays either? The Uchiha hugged the blonde closer to him. He reflexively put his hands on his chest, pushing him away a little. Why? It was. Uzumaki was in no hurry to escape. He looked thoughtfully at the brunette. I wasn't in the mood. And not now. Sasuke leaned towards the guy, blowing his hot breath over his face. No. Naruto echoed, leaned forward a little and pressed the Uchiha's slightly parted lips with a demanding HC. His hand slid up the brunette's chest, hugging his neck. I said it myself, not here. The Uchiha whispered, forcibly breaking the clutch. Uzumaki exhaled and again pressed himself to the desired lips, eagerly kissing them. I want you, he whispered, moving away from the brunette for a moment, and again he was hot and passionate. Sasuke froze internally. He himself didn't really understand what he was trying to achieve, constantly pressing his lips against the blonde's slightly plump, soft lips and pressing him more and more tightly to himself. The last words Naruto said sounded in unison with the brunette's own thoughts, and required an urgent response. Enthusiastic female voices were heard. Judging by the fact that they were getting louder and louder, the tourists were approaching this staircase leading to the street. Something had to be done. Once again, break the PC, say something, go somewhere. Both understood this. None of the guys wanted to carry out the first step of the simple plan. When the voices became so clear that Naruto could already make out clearly visible incomprehensible words, he forced himself to tear away from the brunette. Let's go back to the hotel, the Uchiha suggested, mentally undressing the blonde. Yeah. Uzumaki nodded and, taking a deep breath a couple of times, reluctantly broke away from the brunette's embrace. Taking a farewell glance at the mysterious cave, he stepped onto the first step of a seemingly endlessly long staircase. It was noticeably colder outside. Perhaps this impression was created due to the sudden rise of a cold wind. The trees rustled restlessly with colorful leaves, as if warning of a coming storm. Not far from the cave from which the guys came out stood a cart that was already familiar to them, drawn by the same, now somehow calm, black horse. A cool gust of wind, which tried to knock down the people who appeared in the clearing, slightly sobered up the guys. Naruto glanced suspiciously at the coachman, who was waving at them welcomingly. Are we in for an extreme trip again? The Uchiha shrugged vaguely and hurried to hide from the cold wind in the cart, not forgetting to grab the Uzumaki's hand. Now that his ardor had subsided slightly, Sasuke tried to convince himself that it was better not to break an agreement that no longer meant anything, but was still in effect. However, he could not deny himself the pleasure of hugging the blonde to him and pressing his lips with a greedy finger. Sitting closer to the window and, just in case, grabbing the life-saving handle above the window in advance, the Uchiha, having exchanged a few words with the driver, again drew the Uzumaki, who had been distracted by some noise, into a passionate chant. The horse neighed displeasedly, reared up, as if protesting against the owner's desire to leave this wonderful place, but still took several slow steps towards the city. Then, roused, he took off and, not caring at all about the slippery turns, carried his happy owner and his burdensome load to a new destination. Passengers did not attach any importance to dangerous turns. They were too busy with each other, and little things like the cart turned upside down didn't bother them at all. Our agreement is not valid. Sasuke peered carefully into the blonde's eyes, burning with uncontrollable desire. Here and now, the only thing that matters is that we both want it.